Spire TV, Channel 70. Congressman Trent Kelly joins us. Congressman, how you doing today?
I'm fine, Dave. Just trying to figure out these virtual platforms. But great to be with you today. Thank you for bringing me on.
Oh, anytime, Congressman. And let's just get right into it. How excited are you that it appears that Nancy Pelosi is going to be the speaker again?
I think that's good for the Republicans, but it's bad for America. And I'm not so sure she's going to get the vote. We still got 5 House races that they haven't called. We're leading as Republicans in all 5 of those. That puts us at 214. And she's got to get 218 votes on the floor. And, much like when I first got elected, everybody's like, you better not vote for John Boehner. There's going to be some Democrats who have pressure not to vote for Nancy Pelosi. So I'm not sure they're going to stand on the floor and say, I vote for her.
Well, and we've talked about it before when she was put into the speaker's position last time. There were 15 Democrats that voted against her, and 10 of those are still in the House for this vote. So there's already been some dissension amongst the ranks.
Absolutely. So I don't think the task is done yet. It's one thing to get passed out of conference as their nominee, but she's still got to get 218 votes, and I don't see that happening. But I don't know who we get. I'll be glad when we get back the majority in 2 years.
Yeah, and I think that's a foregone conclusion at this point, even though we still have to work for it. It's not just going to happen, but I think there's a much higher likelihood now than there was just a month ago of that happening in 2022. Now, let me ask you this. Speaking of that, just your honest opinion, Congressman, just between you and me and, the hundreds of thousands of people listening in, what are the odds that we get anything done in Congress for the next year or two?
I think it depends on how. First of all, this election's not called by the states yet. Our press, our national media, especially the liberal type, have decided this election, but we still have not, only as of yesterday, only one state had certified the results of the election. So we'll see. I think we will get some things accomplished, but it won't be on the right. It's going to be hard if Biden is elected, if he's the guy who's the president. It's going to be hard for him to hold off that left radical wing, AOC and the squad and those guys. It's going to be very difficult, and if they push too hard, they've got to come to the center to get anything done.
And we have seen some things that make us think that might happen from a President Biden if he does, in fact, win the election. But even then, you're still going to have a lot of stress and a lot of conflict up there, which at this point, let's face it, you're familiar with that. You're used to it at this point, right?
Absolutely, but I think that really focuses on we've got elections in Georgia, and the Republicans have to win at least one of those seats to maintain a majority in the Senate, which I think makes it much more workable. If they get all 3, then I think you'll see a lot accomplished. It just won't be good for America.
Well, and there's still a lot of questions in Georgia regarding the election. The recount is going on, and we were talking about it before the break. A lot of very unusual statistical anomalies, I think would be the nice way to put it. They had that rush of votes in the middle of the night that put Biden ahead, and then after that, the next 53 batches of votes that were counted in Georgia right after the election went to Joe Biden. 50.05% to 49.95%. 53 batches in a row, that exact percentage breakdown to the second decimal place every single time. It just smells, Congressman.
It does, and people can say there's no evidence, but let me just tell you, when things look when things look funny, there's a reason they look funny. I don't believe in just coincidences and all those being the same margin of error. It just smells bad. It looks bad, and we've got to get back in those areas where people can trust the integrity of the election, and the people that are conducting these are doing the right thing. I don't care as long as every vote that is legal and lawful is counted, because we have to be represented by our vote.
And that's the point that I've been making, is that this entire situation has changed a bit, in my mind anyway. It's no longer about who is going to hold their hand up on January 20th and be sworn into the White House. It's about whether or not we will ever trust the election system in America again. That's what we're working to try to determine and try to strengthen and make sure that we get to the bottom of these things. And if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But we owe it to the integrity of the system to at least check, I think.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't overturn the election, the people who violated election laws by putting up boards over windows, kicking people out wrong, listen, it may not change the election, but they need to go to jail. They have violated federal and state election law, and they need to be punished for their deeds so that people don't do that in the future.
And that is what I'm talking about, because right now, if we just left it as it is and it was done, it was over, there were no more challenges, anything, in 2 years, would anybody trust whether or not their vote would be counted fairly? And as a result, would they even bother to go vote at that point? So we have to work here to maintain the trust and build the trust in our system as it stands, because right now there's not a lot of trust in the system, and I think that's a fair judgment by some people.
It is. People need to be held accountable, Dave, but I do have to give a shout out to our state. We conducted our election fairly and appropriately. The votes were counted. We had very little incidents in Mississippi. So our Secretary of State, Michael Watson, and working off what Delbert's done, we had a very fair election in Mississippi, and I'm proud to call Mississippi home.
That's the best part about this entire thing, is that Mississippi hasn't turned up in the national news once. It hasn't even been mentioned in all of this election stuff because there's nothing to talk about. We did a good job here, and it's great to be able to say that for Mississippi for once in a category, because like I do, usually we kind of get that one eyebrow raised from the rest of the country.
We absolutely do. Maybe they need to pay attention to us and how to conduct fair elections instead of always smearing us on the news.
Exactly. Mississippi, the national example for elections. I like that. We need to get that message out, I think, a little bit. Get some bumper stickers made or something, Congressman.
Absolutely.
Now, the interesting thing that has happened to me in this election is something that could still change, because with the recount going on in Georgia, depending on what happens there, do you think that will impact the down ballot races, the Senate, the House races, and cause any change there?
I'm hoping that it does. I've talked to my friends from Georgia, and they don't seem to think it's going to change. But if they found 5,400 ballots in the last couple of days that are leaning Republican, it looks like that ought to be enough to put Purdue over the 50% plus one and change that way so there's not a runoff. But I don't know that if they're just counting the presidential or if they also will apply that to the Senate. But I hope they do, because I think that can be the margin that Purdue needs to remain the United States Senator from Georgia.
Can you hang on with us through the break? Congressman Trent Kelly, we'll continue the conversation with him next on SuperTalk. And joining us live, both on SuperTalk TV and on your local stations, Congressman Trent Kelly. And Congressman, we have a couple of people on the C Spire text line that have asked about a topic that I want to touch on briefly here. And that's if, and again, this is still an if at this point, if Joe Biden is the next president of the United States, what does that mean for the Second Amendment? We've heard the rhetoric all during the campaign, all of the threats, all of the promises that were made regarding coming and taking away guns. What are your thoughts on that, and how is that going to unfold if we have a Biden presidency?
Again, it goes back to the Senate. We have to hold the United States Senate. We've seen the crazy gun legislation that the House passed for the last 2 years under Speaker Pelosi. They always guise it in it's safe and it's background checks, but when you read red flag laws and all those things sound great on their face, but when you read the details of them, what they're wanting to do is register and come take our guns. So we have to hold the Senate. He can do some things by executive order, but I think with our court, they will hold those unconstitutional, especially as they deal with the Second Amendment. It is so important that we hold the Senate, because if we don't, the House and Senate will pass gun legislation. We will no longer have our Second Amendment rights. We won't have First Amendment rights. the corrupt voting that we've seen across the nation will be passed and done federally by the Democrats to make unlawful voting lawful.
And that's one problem that I don't think is getting enough attention right now, or one potential problem, I should say, is that during this administration and during the next 2 years, it won't take long if they get everyone mobilized behind it. If we don't have the Senate as a firewall here, as a stopgap, they can put a federal voting system in place, put all of these things in place, mail-in voting, the computer system, standardize it to where, for example, Dominion would be required to be used in federal elections all across America. And the chance for fraud and manipulation and irregularities would just be cemented into law at that point. And we need to avoid that at all costs.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at there's 5 House races. One of them is 50. It's less than 60 votes out of almost 100,000 votes in Iowa. But the other ones are all in California and New York, and they want to implement their voting laws on the rest of us. Republicans are leading in all those races, but they're still counting votes. And we don't need to put California and New York election laws across this nation with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi in charge of fairness.
And that is one thing that we can take a little hope from because, as you said, in California, we've got 3 different races out in California where the Republican is in the lead right now as the votes are being counted. And a lot of people, that has raised some eyebrows when that has come out. And they say, in California? Really? But that's the case. And I think, to me, that speaks to a lot of support for Republican values and conservative issues amongst the people in America, all across America. They're just not getting heard with their voices, I think, with the way things are unfolding right now.
Yeah, California, you've got some conservative pockets there. We 3 races, and we have the potential of flipping one more and holding one that we flipped last in the special election. So a big deal in California. People are migrating back to their conservative values. And it's about Second Amendment. It's about suppression of speech from the left. They talk about free speech, but what they want to do is suppress everyone's voices that doesn't sound like them. And our colleges and universities, our professors in a lot of those, are the ones who are hounding our kids and revising history and revising the Constitution of the United States.
Well, and I don't know if you saw part of the proposed budget from Governor Tate Reeves here in the state for the upcoming fiscal year is over $3 million to try to combat that in the schools in the way that history is being taught and the way it's being revised and then pumped into our kids' heads. And that's an important issue as well, and something that we have to focus on, because you're exactly right. That's what they're doing. They're rewriting history in order to back up their arguments when, well, their arguments might not necessarily be backed up by history.
Absolutely. And, listen, we just want history, good or bad, to be taught the history that it is, not revised history.
We have one person on the C Spire text line said, "Who is they? Who's going to enter the home of a person unwilling to surrender their guns and take them away from them? They'll figure out a way, won't they, Congressman?"
Well, they'll try to figure out a way. Listen, I don't think, I have faith that we're going to hold the Senate, and I have faith that they're not going to come get our guns. We just have to do that. Otherwise, I'm telling you, this whole nation is under attack. First, they take your gun. They corrupt the educational system so that they're teaching these liberal values and some of those things. And they suppress free speech from the right. I mean, we're seeing that with Twitter. I mean, look at Twitter and Google and all these execs. I mean, that's monopolies run amok who are suppressing conservative speech.
Now, have you made any hit lists yet? Because the liberals keep putting out their hit list of people that don't agree with them. They've decided now is the time to start rounding everybody up, basically. Have you made any list yet?
Well, I made the one that got shot at on the baseball field. I think that was enough. I'm sure I'm on somebody's list, but, it's unbelievable. I'm going to represent the people of Mississippi and Mississippi values. And if that puts me on a list, then they'll just have to put me on a list.
I realize everything is all turned upside down right now, and regular business hasn't been regular business for a while. But what's coming up on the agenda that might interest the folks at home that you see in the near future that you guys will be dealing with?
Well, right now I'm a conferee on the National Defense Authorization Act, which funds our military. It's really important to do that and get that done. I think we'll pass that. COVID relief, I really don't think that our speaker wants to do anything short of have a political statement. She does not want to work, does not want to help. She's more concerned about being reelected as speaker than she is helping the American people. It's sad that we can't pass a relief package to help people on COVID, but just everybody understand they can talk all they want, but Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are the only impediments from those things happening.
Well, and just from the outside looking in, Congressman, it looks like a case of, well, relief, sure, we need to do that, but I'm fine. I don't need relief, so it's not a big priority. We can use this as a political game instead of actually helping the people in America that need help.
Yeah, and the people that need help, and it's so easy. There's a House bill that's signed by tons of people that just reinvest in the PPP. I mean, we're not the average family is probably doing okay, but who is suffering is our small businesses, our restaurants, customer service related people, and we have to bail those guys out because otherwise our economy will crash if these small businesses can't thrive.
And right now, the economy not doing too terribly bad, all things considered, especially with the year we've had. But you have to remember, you have to put it in the context of before the pandemic hit, we were experiencing record growth in this country, just unheard of amounts of growth. It was stymied for a while. Now we built back up to close to where we were, but it's a question moving forward of whether we're going to continue to grow or whether we're going to stagnate and start to fall behind. And that's what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Our small businesses have been hit the hardest by COVID as far as economically, and we've got to make sure that we give them the means to sustain, especially when governments, we do not need another government shutdown. We don't need to do what they're doing in New York and Governor Cuomo and what they're doing in California, where they're just shutting down the economy and making people stay home. And you know what? Their infection rates are the same as they are across the nation. And so we've got to be safe and take care of people, but we can't shut everything down.
Now, let me ask you this. Are we getting more checks, Congressman? I think some people want to know that, so I'm going to ask it. Or is everybody going to get another check of their own money back?
Right now, I don't think so, but we will see. I mean, no packages passed. I don't know. I don't know what they're discussing. This is Nancy Pelosi is discussing in that closed room. And so right now, I just don't see any package before the end of the year unless she concedes something. In that case, they probably will get a check. Everybody didn't get one, though. A lot of us didn't.
Yeah, I know. That's part of the problem. And especially when you consider the fact that this is taxpayer money, and that's been the problem from the beginning. And we talked about it when the first package was being discussed. Sooner or later, the bill comes due, and that's what the conservative outlook is, that, hey, we can't just keep handing out money with no consideration for how it's going to be paid for in the long run, because it's not, just free from the sky money.
No, absolutely. And it was needed in February, March when it happened to give a boost to the economy. But right now the economy is not. And so it's not, we're on an upward plane, and we just need to make sure we stay there.
Congressman Trent Kelly, we appreciate your time, sir. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. Go out there and say something into a microphone and get on a list.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Good talking to y'all.
Anytime, sir. Congressman Trent Kelly, always enjoy talking to him. It shouldn't be too hard to get his name on a list. All he's got to do is walk out and say something like, I love America. That's pretty well going to